Learn how to make a fresh financial start with Trustmark Advantage. Services and advice that fit you to a T.
Thursday, if you're watching over on YouTube. Hey, how are you doing? I hope you're having a wonderful day so far. My name is Bailey Sarian, and this is the Dark History Podcast. Woo! I need a theme song for Dark History, don't I? Anywho, I'm here to talk about some dark-ass history that we never learned in school. Or I should at least say that I never learned in school. If you're new here, hi, welcome, come take a seat by me, don't be shy. If you're interested in learning about people and events that your history books didn't cover in school, but maybe should have, then you'll fit in right in here with us. Okay, look, today's story, it's uncomfortable, okay? It's heartbreaking. It's sad. It's awful. It's sad. Those are all the words I can think of. It just doesn't make any sense. But with all of that being said, there's really no sugarcoating this. This is what happened. And it's when we're honest and when we're transparent that we can learn and grow together, you know? But most of all, not let history repeat itself. So let's set the scene. It's New Year's Day, 1923, and many people are waking up from celebrating the new year. Some of them are still wearing a flapper dress or a suit, tired from dancing the night away in a jazz club, or maybe they're hungover from buying illegal drinks at a speakeasy. Yes, oh yes, it was still illegal to buy alcohol. Wild, right? Of course, though, that was more of the upscale city vibe. If you were in the country, had little less pocket change to spend, or were too straight edge to visit those kind of illegal joints, then you probably had a quieter evening of staying at home and ringing in the new year with your loved ones, you know? Now, 1923 in general, President Warren G. Harding would die in office. The Yankee Stadium would be built in the Bronx, and the original Hollywood sign would be built. Oh yeah, Hollywood was originally called Hollywoodland, but we could save that for another episode, babe. But before all of that, on the morning of January 1st, 1923, 30-year-old James and his 22-year-old wife, Fannie Taylor, woke up at a home in a town called Sumner, a neighboring community of Rosewood, Florida. That morning, James Taylor goes to work like he did any other day. But while James was at work, something happens to his wife, Fannie, that, boy, it just triggers a domino effect, a horrific domino effect. It leads to the murders of innocent people, the destruction of a town, and the displacement of an entire community, changing Rosewood forever. Ooh, this sounds dramatic. I know, because it is. Welcome. Hi. This episode, friends, we're going to be talking about the Rosewood Massacre. Have you heard of it? Yeah, exactly. This one it completely blew my mind. It's why in the Waldo did we not learn about this in school? Correction, I can only speak for myself here. So why in the Waldo did my history books not teach this? Rosewood Massacre? Yeah, it happened. Let's discuss and learn together what took place in 1923 Rosewood, Florida. Buckle in, kitty cats. This is just... What? Yeah, I'm great with words, obviously. That's why I started a podcast. The beginning. Great place to start. The town of Rosewood was established in the mid-1800s. White families had moved here prior to the Civil War, and Black landowners started to move in the 1870s. It's located in the state of Florida, and it's just 9 miles east of the Gulf of Mexico. The name Rosewood, it came from the red cedar trees that were all over the land there. Fun fact alert. Boop, boop, boop. Did you know that when you cut open a red cedar tree, the cedar has a pale pink color inside? Yeah, I guess it's super pretty, super beautiful. But did you also know that if you cut me open, I've got a little pink inside? Ew. Anyways, so they called the town Rosewood after the pink color. Okay, nice, right? Well, as we've learned through history, we can't have nice things. So when people saw the really pretty color that was inside of these beautiful, incredible trees, what do you think they did? Yes, they cut them all down. They cut them down and they sold the lumber. Now, because of this, they made a pretty decent amount of money and it supported the economy of the town, but still, sad for the trees. By the year 1886, the town had developed quite a bit. It had its own post office, a schoolhouse, and there were 3 churches. 1 for the white people and 2 for the black people. Remember, we're talking about a time that's very much a segregated America. So 4 years later, in 1890, the town began to hit some hard times. All the red cedar trees had been chopped down, and without the trees, there's no money to be made, which in turn leads to the town's economic decline. Because of the loss of income and not many available jobs, many members of the white community left Rosewood and headed to the nearby town of Sumner. Sumner was appealing because there was a large sawmill which provided tons of jobs. And right now, the people needed work. So sign me up for Sumner, you know? So by the year 1900, the Rosewood population had now shifted to a majority black community. Now within Rosewood, there was a really close sense of community. Like everyone seemed to know one another and looked out for one another as well. I mean, rarely did anyone need to leave town, like to travel for food or for things they may need, because they had almost everything right there within Rosewood. In addition to the 3 churches, schoolhouse, and post office, Rosewood also had a train station, which will become important later, a general store, and a sugar mill. Plus, if you were looking for some fun, they even had a Rosewood baseball team. What I'm getting at is Rosewood was overall just a nice place. So for over 20 years, the people of Rosewood stayed within Rosewood, and the people of Sumner, the neighboring town, they stayed within Sumner. They coexisted, they had their own communities going on, and they were just doing their own thing. But unfortunately, that peaceful time was about to end because some shit was a brewin'. But before we get into what was a brewin', let's pause for a word from our sponsor. Things are kind of getting back to normal, I guess. Right? Yeah. But I swear to you, over quarantine, my brain has felt like mush and needs some exercise. I mean, it is a muscle, right? You know? Anywho, with Best Fiends, it feels like my brain got a great workout. What's Best Fiends, you ask? Well, it's the mobile puzzle game that will put challenge to your noggin, and it's kind of like you did a workout, but again, for your brain. Not only that, Best Fiends is so fun, you won't want to put it down. Plus, Best Fiends has literally thousands of fun puzzles to solve. I'm currently on level 50 with like a lot more to go, so there's really nothing to brag about there. There's literally something new to play every day, and the characters are just so adorable. I want to be Best Fiends with them. Best Fiends is constantly putting out updates, so there's always something new and exciting to explore. Whenever I'm feeling a little bored or I have some time to kill in between these Zoom meetings, I just bust out my phone and go straight to Best Fiends to tackle some puzzles. Download the 5-star rated puzzle game Best Fiends free today on the App Store or Google Play. That's Best Friends without the R. Best Fiends. Thanks, Best Fiends, for partnering with me on today's episode. Okay, remember. It's January 1st, 1923. Our young couple, James and Fannie Taylor, who are white, are waking up on the first day of the new year. And James is like, okay, bye, Fannie. I'm off to work. I love you, babe. You know? And Fannie is like, oh my God, yeah, have a good day. Whatever. That's probably what they did. Anyway, so James leaves his wife Fannie home alone because he has to go to work. He works at the sawmill in Sumner, which was about 1 mile east of Rosewood. Now, while James is at work milling saws, Fannie, who's back at home, rumor had it, someone had attacked her. Oh yeah. The neighbors heard screams. They heard screams coming from within the Taylor's home. And they were like, oh my God, what's going on? Screaming. So for you and I, we'd probably go and check it out, right? We'd be like, oh my God, they're screaming. Are you okay? But for Fannie's neighbors, they heard the screams and then they just left it alone. Great, awesome. So some time goes by and James comes home from work, and when he gets home, he sees that Fannie has a big bruise on her face. It's clear that somebody had hit her pretty badly. So he asks her, who did this to you? And Fannie tells him that a black man assaulted her. She's like, I don't know who it was, but it was definitely a black man, according to Fannie. I mean, this could be possible. This guy came in, randomly beat her, I guess, in her own house. But remember, this is a small town. In fact, both Sumner and Rosewood were so small that most people recognized one another. So, are you sure, Fannie? Are you sure that's who you saw, Fanny? The fact that Fanny could not name the person who attacked her, that should have been the first red flag, okay? That maybe this person that quote unquote attacked her was not a resident from Rosewood. I'm telling you, I'm not kidding you. If you lived in Rosewood, you would know your neighbors. Everybody knew each other. But Fanny would most likely know this person because, again, the likelihood of her not knowing is pretty slim to none. So, sure, Fanny. Sure. Again, because it's the 1920s, unfortunately, this is a time when a white woman made bold claims of being attacked by a black person. Nobody questioned it. They just believed it to be true. So they didn't question Fanny's story for 1 second. Oh my God, she was beaten by a black man. We are so angry. And nobody wanted to double check and make sure she wasn't lying. They just went with it. People are talking within Rosewood, okay? And this story about Fanny, it gets back to a woman by the name of Sarah Carrier. And she's like, wait a minute. That's not true. Sarah said that she was at the Taylor's home the morning of that so-called attack. And not just that, but her granddaughter was there with her. And neither of them saw a black man attack Fanny, let alone even enter their house. Well, you're probably wondering, Bailey, who the hell is Sarah? Okay. Well, Sarah, she had been working for the Taylors for quite some time. She was there that day with her granddaughter doing the Taylor's laundry. Now, Sarah said that she actually saw a white man leaving the Taylor house that morning. She said she never saw a black man come by the house all day. Now get this. Sarah recognized this white man. She had seen him come by the house once or twice before. Sarah had believed that this man and Fanny were having some kind of winky-dinky, if you know what I mean. Sarah said that this man was actually the guy that beat Fanny that morning and that she was just lying to cover her ass because she's probably having an affair and she doesn't want people to know. Fanny. So Sarah's version is now going around town. It's spreading like wildfire within the black community. They all 100% believed her. Why would she lie? Why would she lie? Unfortunately, though, the white voices were louder within the community and made it very clear that Fanny was, quote unquote, not a liar. She was telling the truth. Okay? I freaking roll. Right? It gets a lot more traumatic. Talking amongst the accusers, a name comes up, Jesse Hunter. And they're discussing, they're like, hey, Jesse Hunter, this is our guy. This is the guy who did it. Who's Jesse Hunter? Okay. Now, Jesse Hunter was a black man who recently escaped from the nearby prison. Now, because Jesse was a black man who recently escaped from prison, well, they're believing he must have done it. Must be the same black man that attacked Fanny. Note my sarcasm. Mind you, there was absolutely 100% zero evidence that Jesse was the perpetrator. But that doesn't matter to them. They've got their minds set on Jesse Hunter, and they go out looking for him. While out looking for him, the county sheriff, Robert Walker, he joins in on the search. Now, this county sheriff was able to get a bunch of other white men together to form what was called a posse to help with the search. Now, this isn't like your normal posse today, like a group of friends hanging out. Back then, a posse was a more formal thing. It was an official group of men that a sheriff could organize in case of an emergency. And this, to them at the time, well, this was that kind of emergency. The sheriff would pull in some guys from around town. I don't know how he picked them, but he did. And he made them his temporary deputies, which is wild to think. Just random, like, hey, you're a deputy now. Like, you were allowed to do that. So the county sheriff got the posse together and they start searching for Jesse. Now, they were determined to catch him and punish him for his alleged attack towards Fanny. The posse even went down to the local prison to borrow a pack of bloodhounds to track Jesse's scent. I mean, they were seeing red. No common sense going on here. The posse, they hear that Jesse was last seen with another black man named Sam Carter, who worked as the local blacksmith. Now, this alleged sighting has never been confirmed, but They don't care. Now, remember, again, I've said it 100 times, it's a small town. So they know exactly where Sam Carter lives, and they head straight to his house. They barged in, okay, and they interrogated Sam and asked, like, where's Jesse? And they're demanding it. And they're like, where's Jesse? We need to know where he is right now. Where is he going? Where's Jesse? But Sam, he couldn't answer their questions because, he didn't have the answers, you know? He doesn't know. He has no idea what's going on. Of course, the posse doesn't believe him. They were convinced that Sam, he knew something, okay? Because they are convinced of this, they get swept up in what becomes this angry mob mentality. So they force Sam out of the house. They kidnap him. The posse's thought process was that if they torture Sam, like, they can probably get some answers as to where Jesse is. So they kidnapped Sam. They hung him from a tree by his neck, pushing Sam to tell the quote unquote truth. Sam, he was telling the truth the whole time. He didn't know where Jesse was, but that's not acceptable to the posse. They're hell-bent on their mission of quote unquote justice. They shot him to death and left his body in the road between Rosewood and Sumner. Sam Carter was only 45 years old. This is just the tip of the iceberg. So by that night, the original posse, which was, it was just kind of small at first. Oh, babe. It had now snowballed into a freaking mob. Oh, yeah. People were talking, and the neighboring towns got word about like what had taken place and that this manhunt for Jesse was going down. So a bunch of rando white men come out of the freaking woodwork. It was like, where'd you guys come from? They just showed up. There was no official count of how many men joined this riot, but that's exactly what it turns into, a freaking riot. And this is when the massacre begins. I know, this is a little heavy. We're just going to take a little moment here, a break for a sponsor that helps keep Dark History going. Get mouth-watering seasonal recipes and fresh, pre-measured ingredients delivered right to your door with HelloFresh, which is America's #1 meal kit. HelloFresh makes cooking at home fun, easy, and affordable. They offer 50 menu and market items each week, including ready-to-eat salads, sandwiches, and soups. There's something for everyone to enjoy. I love soup. Clam chowder, sign me up. Just love it. Anyways, all these recipes are designed and tested by professional chefs and nutritional experts to make sure that not only is it super delicious, but it's also simple and just good for you. HelloFresh, they cut out that stressful meal planning and prepping that you have to do, so you could just get back to enjoying cooking and getting dinner on the table in just about 30 minutes. They even have a 20-minute offer. It's like a quick and easy option. So if you're in a rush, you only got 20 minutes, HelloFresh has got you covered. I love HelloFresh because it's just really easy, honestly. It breaks down the recipe step by step so you cannot mess it up. And let me tell you, I usually mess everything up. Usually I start kitchen fires, but with HelloFresh, no kitchen fires. It's so easy, I can do it. And that's saying a lot. If you're interested, I would suggest you go to HelloFresh.com/darkhistory14 and use my code darkhistory14 for up to 14 free meals, including free shipping. Thank you, HelloFresh, for partnering with me on today's episode. The death of poor Sam Carter was the catalyst for what was about to become the Rosewood Massacre. The posse is still out searching for Jesse Hunter. Remember, the prison escapee who the mob believed beat Fanny? But now, the posse searching for Jesse, it's growing bigger and bigger, and more white men are joining this mob from all over Florida. Because this mob had grown to such a big site, members of the community, families, both black and white, could sense that things were getting out of control. Violence was a brewing, and this no longer feels like it was just a search for Jesse. Nay, it was turning more aggressive, angry, hate-filled, as this white mob was now using this as an excuse to destroy everything in sight. So the black community is terrified by what they're seeing happening in their own town of Rosewood. They thought that maybe if they got together in a large group in some of their homes, there would be safety in large numbers protecting them. So they did that. A couple of days go by, and on day 3, there's another rumor spreading around that Jesse was actually hiding in one of the homes that they missed back in Rosewood. And the home was none other than Sarah Carrier's house. Do you remember Sarah Carrier from earlier? She's the one who did the laundry for the Taylors, who told the truth, who had the real story. Sarah, yeah. Sarah's son, Sylvester Carrier, he also lived in the house with her. Now, there was some tension between Sylvester and the people of the white community because he was known for speaking up for himself and protecting the women in his family, which I know, what's wrong with that? There's absolutely nothing. Good for him. Good for him. I know, I agree with you. But again, this is the 1920s. It wasn't smart, quote unquote smart, to stand up for yourself or others towards a white person, unless you wanted some issues. So with all of that being said, it's kind of not surprising when the posse looked at Sylvester as their next target. Now, in addition to this angry mob coming their way, Sylvester and Sarah also had another problem. They were keeping a lot of children from the community within their home, although the exact number wasn't known. You see, their home was close to a swamp, which in turn made a great location to hide because it provided cover, and it wasn't easy to walk around in, making it hard to be followed or even get caught. Unfortunately, the swamp would come to be their best protection. On the 4th day of this riot, January 4th, the white mob is headed for the Carrier home. But Sylvester wasn't going to just hide and do nothing. He was going to defend himself, his family, the children, his property, and it was about to get violent. When the mob gets to the Carrier's house, the first thing they do, I'm sorry, but they shoot the Carrier's dog. I know, they just freaking shoot the dog. One of the guys in the mob, he calls out to Sylvester. He's like, hey, come out here and present yourself. Come face us. So some time goes by and they're getting no response. So now they're frustrated. They're pissed off. 2 of the white men from the mob, they decide to walk up onto the porch and start kicking down the front door. These 2 men were Henry Andrews and Polly Wilkerson, and it's Wilkerson who ends up kicking in the front door. So inside of the home with Sylvester and Sarah amongst the children, there was a 9-year-old girl named Minnie Lee Mitchell Langley. She said that Sylvester saved her that day. Minnie recalled when Sylvester put her in a safe spot under the stairway while they got ready to fight. She also said that he got behind her at one point, put a gun on her shoulder, pointing it at the front door, and waited for Polly Wilkerson to kick the door down. And when Polly finally kicked that door down, Sylvester started shooting to defend themselves. They would end up killing both Andrews and Wilkerson. Great, good. Can I say that? Well, I did. But listen, once the mob realized that Andrews and Wilkerson were shot and killed, it was not good. They were raging, okay? They were livid. They were fuming, and a gunfight then ensued. Sadly, Sarah Carrier and her son Sylvester, in the middle of this crossfire, were both tragically murdered. The mob keeps shooting, and they don't freaking care who they're hitting. The only reason they eventually stopped firing was because they ran out of bullets. Great. Now, we don't know how many men, women, and children hiding in the house with Sarah and Sylvester survived, if any. But what we do know is that the ones who were able to sneak out of the house, they went and they hid in the swamp. They escaped, but not before they saw things that they wouldn't ever forget. One of the children, Arnett Goins, spoke later about their struggle to escape. Goins said he remembers them staying out for 2 or 3 long January nights in the cold swamp, scared for their lives. But after days of waiting, they were able to escape the mob. Now, the guys in the mob are pumped with adrenaline and anger, and they are ready to cause more destruction. They decided to set fire across several houses and a church on their way back home. So this was no longer about Fanny or Jesse. This was just a mission to destroy any property owned by the Black community in Rosewood and the surrounding areas. With the mob on the move, the Black people living in Rosewood began to flee the town in a hurry. They knew that the mob would be coming back wanting revenge for the murder of Andrews and Wilkerson. They weren't going to just let that go. So many hid in the cover of the swamp like the kids did, thinking it would be hard to find them or catch them in there. Within Rosewood lived a man named John Wright. Now, John Wright was well known within the Black community. He was a white man, but he was friendly to his neighbors. Again, this is a different time period, right? And John, he wanted to help protect them in their time of need. He's seeing out his window what's going down in Rosewood, and he wants to open up his store and help the community. These are his neighbors, his friends, his family. He can't just sit back and watch it. Because John was white, the mob didn't even think about burning down his house. No, they did not. They were like, nope, he's white, he's good, save his house, but burn all these over here. There were also white families in Sumner who sheltered and protected people who they knew, often people who worked for them. Friday morning on January 5th, 1923, it's now day 5 of the Rosewood Massacre. Things have been pretty bad so far, but shit's about to get even more real. 200 armed white men come storming into Rosewood, and they're coming from all over the state to be a part of this action. With those 200 armed white men, some were even members of the Ku Klux Klan. As you can probably imagine, this is not good. This is very bad. Why are they even here? How did they get? He's like, why are they here? What are they doing here? There isn't even much information as to how these guys knew what was going on, but what we do know is that they showed up. So the group, it's gotten a lot larger, right? And they were causing way more damage and destruction. They burned more homes. They burned the second church, the Masonic Lodge, and the schoolhouse. They even burned the baseball field too. Just everything. Complete and utter destruction. Everything is gone except John Wright's house. So at this point, it's hard to know how many Black residents are still left in their town. Those who could, they ran for the swamp. But unfortunately, those who were too old or sick to run, they were trapped there. And the members of the mob shot them on sight, such as Lexi Gordon. She was a Rosewood resident. She ran from her burning home that day, trying to escape, when she was shot in the back and killed. Not just killed, she was murdered. The same day, a man named Mingo Williams was also murdered. He was shot in the head. He wasn't even from Rosewood. He was literally just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Mingo was the 7th recorded person to die in Rosewood. So far, there's Sam Carter, Sylvester Carrier, his mother Sarah, Lexi Gordon, and now Mingo Williams, who are killed by the mob, murdered by the mob. And then there's Henry Andrews and Polly Wilkerson, who were killed while storming the Carrier house. So in the early hours of day 6, it's around 4 a.m., some help finally comes for those who were trying to escape this destruction. By this time, word got out about what was going on in Rosewood, and everybody was talking about it, right? Brothers John and William Bryce also got word about what was taking place in Rosewood. I know. It's a lot of names I'm throwing at you, but who are John and William Bryce? Okay. Well, they worked as train conductors who happened to pass through the Rosewood train station all of the time. And the Rosewood train station was one of the only things that wasn't burnt down. So when they found out what was happening, taking place, what was going down in Rosewood, they knew that they had to help out their community. So the brothers pulled their train into the station to allow women and children who had been hiding in the swamp hop on the train and get the heck out of Rosewood as fast as they could. With a train full of people, the Bryce brothers stopped in different cities along the route, allowing the survivors to get off the train and attempt to begin their lives again in a new city. They had left everything behind. They escaped near death, and now they were forced to live in fear and never return to their homes in Rosewood again. To this day, some of the victims' descendants still live in the nearby towns that they went to, like Gainesville, Florida. Now let's take a little pause for a break. Squarespace empowers millions of dreamers, makers, and doers by providing them with the tools they need to bring their creative ideas to life. With Squarespace, it's an all-in-one platform where you can build a website, claim a domain, sell products, or even just market your brand. Squarespace has made it easier than ever to establish your online presence. It's the perfect option for people who are ready to take, that next step and make their ideas come to life. Because you can personalize everything when it comes to your website, it can truly be a reflection of who you are and what your brand stands for. It's so easy to use. If you are new to this at all, it's not intimidating. If this sounds up your alley, I would suggest you head to squarespace.com/darkhistory for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch your new website, use the offer code DARKHISTORY to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Big thank you to Squarespace. Hey, Squarespace! On Sunday, January 6, 1923, this is the sixth and final day of the Rosewood Massacre. The angry posse turned mob that had burned most of Rosewood and left a path of destruction in its wake was now setting out to finish what they started. They wanted to burn down any property left and kill any Black residents who had not escaped. So they come across James Carrier on the road. James was Sarah's brother and Sylvester's uncle, and he was partially paralyzed from a stroke. While Sarah and Sylvester had bravely held down the fort during the attack, he had escaped with the children and had also hidden with them in the swamp. After, it seemed like, the danger might have passed. So he gets up and he leaves the swamp, hoping to return to his home and just kind of figure it out from there, right? But unfortunately, James, he wouldn't make it. Some members of the mob, they surrounded him. They marched him to the local cemetery, where they then shot and murdered him right next to the fresh graves of Sarah and Sylvester. I know. This is awful. I know. After the murder of James, the mob just kept setting fire to all of the homes and buildings until literally there's nothing left. Rosewood was completely wiped. It was destroyed. It was gone. With that being said, what we know for sure is that at least 8 people died during the Rosewood Massacre. But what hasn't been recorded is the trauma on the community for decades to come. And I should add, it's believed that there are a lot more victims than just 8, but there are 8 on record. So a few weeks go by, and in February of 1923, somebody finally speaks up, and they're like, hey, something just happened over here that maybe we should talk about. So they bring it to the attention of a grand jury. The way a grand jury worked, at least back then, was that a prosecutor presents a case to a group of citizens, and they can ask questions and investigate the situation, and they get to decide if they think anyone should be charged with a crime. It sounds pretty fair, right? The thought of it, the idea of it sounds pretty fair. But in 1923, unfortunately, this jury would have been all white. So, not a surprise when they didn't see anything wrong with what had taken place in Rosewood. And they chose not to press any charges. No one involved in the massacre was found guilty of a crime. In fact, to make things even worse, no one was even arrested for these murders. It took until the 1931 case of the Scottsboro Boys for any kind of solid law pushback to stop Black people from being excluded from being jurors. This case, which involved 9 Black teenagers accused of allegedly raping a white woman, had not just one trial, but a series with all kinds of reversals, dismissals, retrials. I mean, it lasted over 2 decades. This whole thing is a wild story. Again, we're definitely going to have to do it for another time. But after it was discovered that there were no Black people in the jury records, there were names that had been forged to make it look like there was. AKA, they lied. They forged them. Do you get what I'm saying? You get it. Once they realized that the names had been forged, did the Supreme Court say the Alabama jury selection process was unconstitutional because it was all white and it excluded Black people on purpose. This, of course, didn't get rid of the all-white juries, but it was a start. And that's important because in Florida, all-white juries were 16% more likely to convict Black defendants than white defendants. And that's not looking good when you are looking for a fair trial. Fair trial. Like, come on, you guys. No. But besides all of that, the cherry on top of this whole story, all the records relating to the Rosewood Massacre were lost. Gone. Poof. Disappeared. There are no records as to what happened. Yeah. No, there's no records. There's no records as to what took place in Rosewood. The only way we're able to tell this story of history is by word of mouth. Now we're going to pause for a break. This summer is showing welcoming signs of a more normal life ahead. Finally, you can get back to enjoying the little things in life, like smiling at your neighbor. Hey, Bob, seeing a movie. Maybe even going to the post office. Okay, yes. What? I live a boring, normal life. I didn't choose this life. It chose me. But with Stamps.com, you can actually skip trips to the post office and even save money on postage. Save money, you say? Yes. Who likes saving money? You do. Mail and/or ship anytime, anywhere, right from your computer. Maybe send your grandma a letter. Hey, grandma, or ship some packages. And with Stamps.com, you can pay less. A lot less, because they got the homie hookup with the discounted rates from USPS and UPS. So with Stamps.com, thousands of businesses have saved countless hours and money every year. If you're new or a small business, they make it easy to mail and ship with the ability to print official US postage and shipping labels 24/7 without having to leave your desk or having to buy fancy equipment, All you need is your computer and a standard printer. And with their switch and